All right, what is going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to the KC Sports Report. Michael Darcy, your host here as always, and tonight I have the pleasure of having my good friend Lucas Murphy on the show. He's a contributor over at Inside the Royals and Blue Wings Rising, both publications of Fan Nation. And today we're going to talk about the NFL draft from a Chiefs perspective and overall the importance of this draft. So, Lucas, the Chiefs have 12 draft picks in the NFL draft, and the draft is like 6-7 days away. So it's coming up very quickly, and with all this draft capital, the Chiefs have got to fill some pretty big positions of need. So, what are your overall thoughts of the spots the Chiefs are in, and how confident are you that the Chiefs can fill some of those holes?
I'm pretty excited, man. Honestly, I wish I could tell you which article or which podcast I went on and just completely talked about how excited I am about this draft and how I spoke about how the Chiefs just really need to build up draft capital in this draft. I think, you always see like a heavy dose of like first-round talent. It bleeds into the second round, and then you obviously got your third-rounders, but then it really kind of falls off. I think this draft is obviously not heavy in the quarterback position, but when you start talking about every other position, it's deep across the board, and I think that's what's unique. And those are the types of drafts that the Chiefs can really excel at getting players that they want or fit their need, and then they can go and win more championships. And so the Chiefs obviously do that. They go out and they make the trade for, trade Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins and acquire all these picks. And I think for me that it's just significant. Is there a chance they could use every one of those picks? Yeah, I mean, they could. But what it does is it gives them room to be flexible. And maybe they move up and acquire a huge talent in this draft. Maybe they, drop down and acquire even more picks. I mean, there's just so many different options they can do by creating this flexibility. So I'm super excited with where we're at as an organization as far as draft picks, but I also think from like just an overall like perspective of what we're looking at as far as needs and things like that. I don't think that, some teams have like multiple glaring needs, where the Chiefs, obviously defensive end is a big one. And there's a couple others you can probably talk about. But I would say outside of that, there's not really like overly bearing, like glaring needs. So the Chiefs could honestly get some very good players as depth pieces as well to really kind of build longevity, which is what the whole goal is. I mean, you're trying to build longevity. You don't want to be a one and done. And so I think that this draft is going to be exactly that. It's going to be the start of kind of a new.
I mean, yeah, this is the biggest draft in Brett Veach's tenure, and he really has to nail it because all the pressure's on him because you don't have that superstar core that you had a couple years ago. This is the new era. We got to see what new players that Brett Veach can add, and I think that he's definitely going to have the capital to go out and do it. He's got 2 first-round draft picks, pick 29 and 30, 2 second-round draft picks, pick 50 and 62, 2 in the third, pick 94 and 103, 2 in the fourth at 121 and 135. The Chiefs do not have a 5th or a 6th-round draft pick, but they have 4 in the 7th round, having picked 233, 243, 251, and 259. Now, getting back to your thoughts, I kind of disagree. I think the Chiefs have some glaring issues on the defense. Now, you talked about the defensive end. That's big. I think that one of those first-round draft picks has got to go at defensive end. But when you're kind of looking at it, like the Chiefs have some massive holes at corner too. I love L'Jarius Sneed. I love Rashad Fenton. Those are the only 2 quality cornerbacks right now that you have on your roster that can play next year. I think cornerback's a massive need. And I think that when you look at it, defensive end, they don't have anyone rushing the passer. They might have to take multiple defensive ends in this draft class, which it's a good class to need a defensive end, but the superstars like the Kayvon Thibodeaux and Aiden Hutchinsons, they're going to go in the top 5. So they're going to have to find someone like a George Karlaftis, or if Jermaine Johnson falls that far, they're going to have to find some value picks. And I just think that, they had the capital to do so, but there's a lot of pressure on Brett Veach to get the right guys because, we're talking about all this capital. If Veach doesn't get the right guys with all of this draft capital, it's all going to be at the feet of him. Like, there is no excuse. I do think, however, that, a need that is going to go underappreciated is an offensive lineman. Now, you probably don't have to pick one of those until like the 4th, maybe if you trade back up into the 5th or the 6th. Expect a wide receiver to get picked within the first 2 rounds. I think personally they're going to use that first round pick, at least the first round pick, to draft an edge rusher. But, Lucas, as we'll probably talk about in this video, I'm not necessarily counting out Brett Veach trading up or trading back in this draft because, we've seen in his tenure, he's willing to trade up. He's actually never traded back. So I'd be interested to see what you think about that. But, what are your thoughts on potentially trading up?
I think that's probably going to be, if you had to take one or the other, I would say he's probably going to trade up. I think what's going to play into that factor is who do they truly value, and are they getting the right value? And so I think that's what you have to pay attention to. I don't necessarily, I would like to see them maybe fall back with one of those first-round picks and maybe acquire more seconds or thirds, or even like maybe load up a little bit in the future in those areas. So like maybe a 2024 second or third or something like that. But it'll be interesting for sure, just because I think, I don't think that a wide receiver right now is a huge, huge need. Now, would I be upset if they went and got one? No. If they go get a Jamison Williams, if they go get any of these top elite receivers, because there's a ton of them, I would be 100% okay with that, and I'm not going to be disappointed. But I agree with you more than anything. I think defensive end is massive, and I think once you kind of get past the first couple names, it really does kind of drop down into more of a specialty. And because, like Thibodeau, for example, he has the ability to just kind of be an all-around type of defensive end. He can play some outside linebacker. Then you start talking about a guy like Devontae Wyatt from like Georgia. You start talking about Jermaine Johnson. You start talking about, even Aiden Hutchinson. But then you kind of drop down a tier, and it's not necessarily like the skill set completely falls off, but it's more, again, like a specialty. So I think a Carl Loftus. I think, you start talking about some of the other guys like Boye Mafe from Minnesota, and then Ebiketie from Penn State. And those are the types of guys, and honestly, I'm actually really interested in those guys. I think that they could provide the Chiefs something. And again, David Ajabo's falling down around the Chiefs. I've seen so many mock drafts with him kind of falling and being taken at either 29 or 30. So those are things that you can take into consideration. But yeah, I think that there's probably a better chance that they move up and maybe really target one guy and then use maybe the other pick to just kind of get the best position available type of thing. But yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. And, I'd be okay. We kind of talked, a little bit beforehand, but there'd be some things that would maybe throw off, like if they took an offensive lineman, for example, in the first round. I think a lot of people might have the question marks of like, what are they doing? But if they took a corner in the first round, if they took a safety in the first round, if they, drafted a wide receiver, they took a DN, even if they took a linebacker, in my opinion, I would be okay with some of those options. So I really think that they can go however they feel and whatever best player they feel is there.
And they have so many picks. You have 6 picks in the top 3 rounds. Now, I'd be interested to see if Veach uses some of those third-rounders to trade up into the second round. What's really interesting is that I'm seeing reports that the Jags actually want to trade out of their pick, which may or may not happen, and also the Vikings want to get out of their pick. Now, if the Chiefs were trying to get that game-changing player and they want to get a wide receiver, I think you could get Jamison Williams at 12 if that's what the Vikings pick is. I think the problem is, and I heard this actually on the drive with Carrington Harrison, ironic because I work here at 810, but I heard that they were talking to Matt Verderam, and there is a certain amount of wide receivers that you would consider elite and game-changing. And like a Chris Olave, he's not bad. And like Sky Moore, he's not bad. But to get a top 10 future wide receiver or somebody that could develop into becoming that, Jamison Williams is like one of the only guys on the roster in the draft that could do so. So I think if the Chiefs are trying to get that guy, they're going to have to pay a hefty price. But, I wouldn't necessarily be against using pick 29 and 30 and drafting back-to-back defensive ends. I think that would actually be a really good scenario because at least at that point you got more bodies that could come in and give you, let's say, 4 or 5 sacks apiece. And if you have that, all that production, it's going to kind of make up for itself. But, what are your thoughts on the Chiefs drafting, like, if the Chiefs drafted only 2 offensive players, let's say a wide receiver and a offensive lineman in the later rounds, what would your thoughts be if they used the rest of the picks on the defense?
I think that's a must. I honestly do. I think, I do think corner is one of those that you kind of have to address just because they did we did lose Ward. And I think there's a lot of very talented corners in this draft that, McCreary from Auburn's a big one of mine. Like, I think he plays very well. There's guys in there, too, that – and I'm just going to use this as an example. Like, who's to say the Chiefs aren't, like, super interested in, like, Sauce Gardner and, like, they know how good he truly can be from Cincinnati, and maybe they go up and get a corner like him. And, that might throw people off and be like, man, we really didn't expect that. But how big would that be to have a lockdown corner in this very, very talented AFC West? So those are things that you have to kind of at least take into consideration. And I really do like I said, this draft is very deep at positions, and I think you're going to get good, talented players throughout. And, again, it's just really kind of when it comes to that defense, though, I think we have to almost highlight that because we understand how much better the AFC West got. And that's going to be, every time you talk to somebody, they always say defenses win championships. And as crazy as that sounds, I still to this day believe that because we saw Tampa Bay, what they did to the Chiefs. Granted, the Chiefs' offensive line was literally flapping like a torn piece of, duct tape. But I think defenses win you championships. And if you're able to hold and contain offenses and your offense just goes out there and balls out, then that's how you win Super Bowls and you create longevity. So if they were to unload draft picks on this defense the whole time, I would be overly satisfied for sure.
Well, one thing that I want to mention is that all offseason long we're hearing Chiefs Kingdom, and specifically on Twitter, banging the table, just saying sign anyone at this point. And, I think what route the Chiefs decided to go was we're going to rebuild this team in the draft with cheap talent that we believe could be the future. Now, that kind of speaks to the level of importance this draft is put on because, like I said at the beginning of this video, if Brett Veach does not hit with 6 or 7 of these picks, at least getting someone who could see the field, this team is going to be set back for years to come. And I'm not trying to be that negative guy, but I think that we have to kind of take a step back and understand how important this draft class is. We are looking at either replenishing the team to get back to a competitive level of going to AFC championship games or going to Super Bowls. Or if he misses on a lot of these draft picks, we're looking at a team that might only win 9 or 10 games for the next 5 to 6 years. I mean, I think that's how important not only this draft class is, but next year's is as well. So what do you think about that? Do you put that level of importance on it, or is that just me?
I think so. I think so. I have kind of 2 takes from this because you kind of mentioned, like, everybody kind of wants that to sign everybody or really kind of go out and get anybody when they're available. I think that's just Kansas City excited. Yeah. And they know, like, hey, like, this person would fit well. My example is, like, Deebo Samuel. And I think Deebo would be amazing in this offense. I really do. But I think with the direction the Chiefs are heading, you have to at least give them the opportunity to kind of draft a player like that. We've seen them do it with Tyreek Hill. We've seen them do it with other guys as well. And you have to develop those guys too. They have the greatest quarterback in Chiefs history throwing them the football. He took most of the guys that are going to be in this offense down and they practice for a huge chunk of this, time span in the off season. There's a lot of things that can be done with that. So that's kind of my first point is do I want Deebo Samuel? Of course I would like Deebo Samuel. I think he's a phenomenal player. But I also think that a guy like that could be potentially drafted in this draft. Like if we took Jamison Williams, I think a lot of people would be like, hey, I like that pick, and I think he could really develop into something absolutely special for this team. And so that's kind of the take I get. I think I've kind of changed my motive as well because, of course, Davante Adams is available. Do I want the Chiefs to go get him? Yeah, if he was the Chiefs were interested, go get him. But I think you have to, in the grand scheme of things, understand that the Chiefs can't just go out and blow massive money on contracts left and right and stay competitive for long periods of time. I mean, the Rams are kind of going through that situation where, they unloaded and go get guys and they spend all this money and now they're trying to have to figure out how they're going to continue up this relevancy. Where the Chiefs kind of played the middle road where they did spend some money, but they've also accepted the fact that, hey, we have to move on from some guys. They traded Tyreek Hill. They move on from the Honey Badger. Those were fan favorites, and they're like, hey, we're trying to win championships. We're not trying to just make favorites and keep guys here for whatever reason. We've done that before in the past, and we've signed bad contracts, but we're moving forward to that. So, man, I just think that I wish as fans we could move past that and understand it's a business and we're trying to just do good and win Super Bowls. So that's the big thing for me.
Yeah, and really quickly, I want to address the Deebo Samuel rumor. I was listening to a show, and a 49ers expert, quote unquote, was talking about the potential trade to the Chiefs, and the person asked, what would it take? And this 49ers expert said that he would not take 2 first-round draft picks for Deebo Samuel, saying it was too light. I'm not exactly sure what the people in California are smoking. If you think I'm going to give you 2 first-round draft picks for Deebo Samuel, first of all, you're crazy. Second of all, he was very good last year. We only trade first-round draft picks, multiple first-round draft picks, to get quarterbacks. Deebo Samuel is not better than Tyreek Hill. Deebo Samuel is not better than Davante Adams, both of which did not go for multiple first-round draft picks. That's not going to happen, but I think the Chiefs are out on Deebo Samuel. In fact, Brett Veach sat down for his pre-draft press conference and kind of joked we're not going to get Deebo, or we're going to get Deebo Samuel or something like that, and the media laughed. I personally think the Chiefs are out on him, but I do think that they're going to be able to fill that need in the draft. And I don't want to say that wide receivers are a dime a dozen, but it's just not worth paying a guy $25 million unless he's Tyreek Hill. There's going to be some bums, not to use a bad term, there's going to be some bums that get a lot of money in free agency because the wide receiver market exploded, like Christian Kirk. There's no way in hell he should be getting paid as much as he is, and I think that kind of broke the market, and you're going to see average wide receivers get paid a lot of money. Almost cursed there. But go ahead.
No, I 100% agree with you because that's why I think, too, it almost does seem like the Chiefs, from a general manager standpoint, so Brett Veach, I feel like he's kind of ahead a little bit when it comes to that, and he understands that with his business savviness. He's talked about the salary cap and when it's going to increase and kind of the anticipation of how much, and so I think he's very in tune with what is going on with the business side of the NFL, and rightfully so. That's his job. But I also think he's not blind or I guess he doesn't fall into traps necessarily where holy cow, Deebo Samuel available, he's a dual threat and he can run the football and he can also catch the football. Well, you can recreate those types of players with the coaching staff that you've assembled that is extremely talented. Andy Reid is top notch to coming up with plays. They obviously keep Eric Bieniemy around. He is very talented at what he does. They go out and, go get Matt Nagy and bring him back. Like, he's a kind of a guru too in some aspects. And so I think that with those minds, you're going to be able to create and reenact things that players like Deebo Samuel do. And, that's a big reason why they like Kyle Shanahan and the new coach that went down to Miami. Those guys schemed for Deebo Samuel. Well, that's the whole point. You find players that fit what you're trying to do, and Deebo fit that really well. But who's to say? Like, he's been openly, voiced, hey, I don't want to run the football from the backfield. I want to be a wide receiver. Well, that could completely change how he is as a player. I'm not saying he's not a great receiver, but the whole reason why he's attractive is because he was that dual threat aspect. So, I know we're talking draft, but man, I tell you, like,
the Deebo thing is interesting. That's just kind of what we got off on it.
Yeah, but I think honestly, man, and to kind of wrap it back to the draft, I think that the Chiefs honestly could focus on drafting players that they really feel can fit what they're trying to accomplish from an offensive standpoint. Like, and I'm going to use this as an example because I've talked about him on KCSportsReport.com. Sky Moore. Sky Moore isn't a very big receiver, but he's very quick. He's shifty. He runs good routes, and he's physical. And he kind of has some of those traits where, not necessarily the Deebo type, like running out of the backfield, but he can accomplish some of what he does from a receiving standpoint. There's a Dotson, I believe, from Penn State, is a very shifty, good route running, very quick type of receiver. So, man, I don't know. I've just changed my whole stance on this. I'm so excited because of how many draft picks we have. And I really think this Chiefs team is going to improve. And I do think, again, to pull it back to where you were at, this is an important draft for Brett Veach because he did load up so much that you at least have to capitalize, I would say, on half your picks this year. You have to at least have, depending on how much they use to trade up or to just draft in general, you have to at least come out of this draft with like 4 to 5 guys, in my opinion, for to be considered, a huge, huge success and to continue winning Super Bowls, going to the playoffs, things like that.
And he raised the bar so much last year with picking Trey Smith in the 6th round and getting a Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey, who I think was just named Rookie of the Year by the Senior Bowl. Like, the Chiefs are in a good position. They have the picks. They have everything lined up to be successful. And kind of like what they didn't do in the AFC Championship game, they got to go out and execute. And I think that to get back to that level, he's going to have to hit on at least 4 or 5 of these guys, just like Lucas said. Now,
Michael, real quick, too, like one thing that people I think a lot of the time they forget is the fact that he did this draft on a year where we were going through a pandemic where they couldn't necessarily see guys, in person. They couldn't really, go to individual workouts because of the pandemic, and they were able to draft the way they did in a situation that obviously was unforeseen and really just a terrible situation. But if he was able to capitalize and draft the way he did during that type of I guess, the situation we were in, imagine what he can do when he is, interviewing guys, going to individual workouts, and sending his guys out to scout, see what type of personalities they are, see what type of people they are. I think there is a huge upside to what he's doing, and now that he's really kind of kicking it in gear and getting it done, that's another reason why I'm so excited because, man, he could really dominate this draft and make the Kansas City Chiefs that much better for so long in the future.
Well, and you see all these other AFC West teams that are pouring all of this money into older players and kind of kicking the contracts down the road. The Chiefs are getting a jump start on them. And if they can win the division somehow this year after seeing all of these other teams go all out, I don't know what to say. Like, they have no hope for the future because the Chiefs are only going to get better with all of this young talent, and they have a chance to get more. And I think that this draft is going to be fantastic. We have a lot of picks, and we'll be here to cover it all. But, Lucas, I thought this was a good, productive video. Do you have anything to add?
And I think we covered it really well. I know if you didn't want to talk a little bit too much Kadarius Toney, I know we've gone a little bit. But...
We might do that in a separate video because this whole thing is
Yeah.
Interesting situation there. But
Sure.
Lucas, it's always a honor and a privilege to have you on. Where can the people find you?
Hey, head over to KCSportsReport.com. We're going to be getting back into some definitely a lot of articles coming out, especially with the draft. We're going to be focusing on who we take in the draft and highlighting them as players. Another place you can find me is at the Beat of KC on Twitter. That's going to be the main place to really get everything that I'm involved with, from KU sports to the Royals to the Chiefs. I mean, you're going to get it all there. So head over to Twitter, the Beat of KC. Inside the Royals is through Fan Nation, like Michael said in the beginning, and also Blue Wings Rising. Been working pretty hard with the baseball season kicking off. So a lot of content coming from me for sure.
Funny enough, the last video that got posted on the channel was the KU Jayhawks winning the national championship, which is kind of funny that it's been that long. But we're back, guys, with more draft content coming consistently. I know the offseason after the draft is going to get slow, but I'm going to try to do my best to do some more Royals content. I know there's a good portion of you that want to see kind of that. And Lucas is the perfect guy to talk about the Royals with because he's a professional. So until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video, and go Chiefs.